Welcome to Grace Fellowship Baptist Church Wednesday evening Bible study for October 20th, 2021. Today is Monday, October 4th, 2021, and we are in the Samson Saga, and we're in Judges chapter 15, and we're dealing with the after effects of Samson's first wedding. Now, he never actually got to consummate his wedding, and so he's mad. He's been cheated by his wife. He's been cheated by his father-in-law. He's been cheated by the community that he threw a big party for 7 days. I mean, let's face it, he had a 7-day party and didn't get to enjoy his wedding. And he had to murder 30 men and collect their clothing to pay off the bad bet he made at the wedding feast. So he's not in good shape. He's been a fool, and God's using this to provoke the Philistines and provoke the Israelites to get out of their slumber of just being slaves to the Philistines and start being people of God. So let's start in chapter 15, verse 1. Later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, "I'm going to my wife's room," but his father would not let him go in. "I was so sure you thoroughly hated her," he said, "that I gave her to your friend. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." So, the father-in-law is given the woman to the friend. Now, the implication is this is one of the 30 companions. It's not another Israelite. So the father-in-law is given the wife to who he really wanted to marry her to, and not to Samson. But he's taken the dowry. He's probably taken the dowry from both men. He's enjoyed the wedding feast. He's made the 30 men that were the companions happy with him because they've gotten 30 pieces of clothing. And it's been several months. This isn't like Samson goes down a week later after he cools off, or 2 or 3 days later after he cools off. It's after the harvest. It's been a while. And he decides, I finished the agriculture work for the season. It's time to go down and enjoy my wedding. And so he takes the goat as gift. He's going to, they're going to have a meal for the whole family probably. And he's going down. He wants to go into a room and let's head on, honey. And the father-in-law goes, No. You can't do that. You were mad at her, and so I gave her to your best man. He's your husband now. You can't go into her. You can't cheat on him. I mean, the father-in-law is actually being somewhat righteous. Now, that said, he probably recognized that, hey, I got what I wanted. I cheated everybody around and got everybody happy with me, except the one guy that I didn't care about anyway. And so he's probably trying to turn him away. And let's face it, he's got a son-in-law that he likes. And he doesn't apparently like Samson too much. But he's trying to mollify Samson like, well, okay, you didn't get a chance to marry her. She's got a younger sister. Why don't you marry her? One woman is as good as another. And in that culture, that's pretty much the way the men's attitude was. One woman is as good as another. Samson doesn't quite see it that way, but it's not true. That one woman is as good as another. There is something to relationship, and we're very individualistic, and even in a clannish culture like that, there was something to individuals being individualistic, and certain people got along better than others. And But the father's kind of trying to do the bait and switch and see if he can get Samson happy because he probably recognizes he's a narcissistic fool, and well, let's see if one woman will get you happy, just as happy as another. If all you really want is sex, well, she can have sex too. And so, he's making the offer. Verse 3, Samson said to them, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I should really harm them." So God is using this to make Samson so mad, he does something to provoke the Philistines. He's been doing them harm. Let's face it, he had to murder 30 men to, to pay his debt. That's non-trivial. You go out and murder 30 men here in Fort Worth. Fort Worth police are going to be working a lot of time to try to figure out who murdered 30 people. And even if they can't totally figure it out, the chances of them giving up are really slim. They're going to keep focusing on it. And, in the past several months, the police have apparently used some extra time that the pandemic has given them to solve some cold cases. I've read, it seems like every other week or so in the news about them solving a murder from 1968, a murder from 1974, and a murder from 1958, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They just, it seems like every week or two, they're solving old, cold cases. Part of that is they have some new tools, and they can look at new kinds of evidence and determine things they couldn't determine before. Some of it's they're able to take clues that were already there, but they couldn't use reliably before and use them reliably. DNA analysis and things like that. And sometimes it's just been, they finally had time to just go put it together and somebody else think about it and look at it and realize we missed something before. And so they went and re-examined it and found it, and then, they could use some of the modern tools and figure it out. But, I can't imagine you going down to Ashkelon and murdering 30 people. And let's face it, at that point in time, it's probably about 25 to 50,000 people. In a town that size, 30 people being murdered in a night, people would be asking questions. I grew up in a town of about 30,000 people, about the size Ashkelon was. And the greater community was about 50,000. If we had 30 murders in one night, it'd be in the news. People would be coming out of the woodworks trying to figure it out. And, it wouldn't take people long to figure out. And let's face it, Samson was a pretty obvious guy. We're going to, pretty soon they're going to figure it out. They may not have known who Samson was directly at that point in time. But if he shows back up in town, they're going to kind of put two and two together, and he's going to be on the short end of things. Well, he's already started that process of getting the Philistines mad at him and the Israelites mad at the Philistines and starting the process of stirring up trouble. God's intentionally causing him to use his personality, his self-centeredness to get revenge in a culture that accepts revenge, and get it in such a way that he gains notoriety and the fight starts. And he's going to do an amazing amount of damage in his lifetime and in his death. And so the fight is starting, and God's using his personality to cause it. His very flawed personality, but it's also his great strength that God gave him. And, Samson doesn't realize he's being used by God. he's just doing what comes natural to him, and he's seeking revenge. Verse 4. So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fashioned a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the stalks and standing grain together with the vineyards and olive groves. Now, I can't imagine catching one fox by hand, much less 300. He worked hard. And he caught them apparently fast enough. He didn't have to sit there and feed them a whole lot and tend them a whole lot. A fox territory is about 3 square miles. And a fox den or fox pack normally has 3 to 5 individuals. Even if he caught everybody in every pack, he's covering a huge chunk of Israel and Philistia to catch 300 foxes. And he has them all at once. I can't imagine pandemonium the 300 foxes would cause. And tying them tail to tail, I can't imagine. They're wild dogs. I can't imagine trying to tie my 2 friendly dogs to get tails together. They would probably object to that. And they love me. And they like whatever Dad does. I'll go along with it. This is uncomfortable, Dad. Why are you doing this? I can't imagine wild foxes putting up with it. I mean, he's got to be a tough guy to catch that many foxes, tie them tail to tail, and tie them together fast enough that the foxes aren't tearing their tails off. And he ties torches to each one of them and lights them. Now, I can see as soon as you light it, you turn the foxes loose and let them go tearing through the grain, starting fires. And that's his plan. He's gonna decimate the country by burning it down, and he's going to use the foxes as what starts the fire and causes it to spread. And I can imagine 2 foxes tied tail to tail with a burning torch on their tails. Yeah, they're going to run around and they're going to try to get it off. And when it's hot, they're going to jump up and run off. And, each one of them's going to try to run a different direction. And they're just going to be going all over and starting fires. And if you set them off far enough apart, you can cause a countrywide fire. He's going to burn the food stocks of the Philistines down. The standing grain, the sheaves, it spreads to the vineyards and destroys vineyards. It spreads the olive groves and destroys olive groves. He's doing a serious amount of damage. He's destroying their wealth. Everybody's going to go hungry this coming year because he burns up all the food. And he burns up the wine, and he burns up the olive oil and olives, and they're kind of stuck with, we don't have anything preserved, and we're just going to have to grow vegetables and eat wild plants, and everything's burned. They're hurting, and they're thoroughly pissed. I mean, they're angry. If this was intentional, they're going to get revenge. And if this was an accident, man, they're still hurting. They're still angry. They're still going to consult their gods and try to cast blame and, do something back for this. Verse 6. When the Philistines asked who did this, they were told, Samson, the Timnite son-in-law, because his wife was given to his friend. So, the Philistines do their investigation and find out, Samson did it. And he was mad because he had this wedding and then his wife was given to the best man because he got mad and ran off. And so they have a natural target, okay. they may not be able to find Samson, but let's face it, the father-in-law and the wife and the best man are findable. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. So they get their revenge. Hey, you caused this because you made Samson mad. We killed you. And, his wife and his father-in-law die. They're the guilty people. They die. Verse 7. Samson said to them, "Since you've acted like this, I won't stop till I get my revenge on you." So he's revenge-oriented also. Of course, we expect that out of a narcissist. And he's the kind of guy that, you kill my wife, yeah, I'm going to get you. And he promises revenge. Verse 8. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Edom. So he attacks the people that killed his father-in-law and his wife, and he exacts revenge on them. Now he's exacted revenge on them because his father-in-law didn't let him get married to his wife. And then when his father-in-law is killed and his wife is killed and he now can't marry her because they're dead, he kills the people that killed his father-in-law and wife. This is the problem with revenge. It's just a never-ending cycle. It just, tit for tat, and it keeps getting stronger and stronger. And everybody thinks they're getting even when they're doing something more severe. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Was losing your wife worth burning the country down, inside down for? And causing a bunch of people to starve to death and go hungry and suffer economically? No, it wasn't. Is murdering that man's wife and father-in-law appropriate for losing this year's crop? No, it wasn't. It's excessive. Is going out and killing everybody that did that? Well, maybe that's acceptable. I mean, you are killing the murderers. Now, admittingly, Samson's already murdered 30 people. So, he's not righteous. And that if he actually got everybody who was responsible for his wife and father-in-law being killed, that might be an acceptable thing. But he's, again, being way in excess. He's murdering a great number. And he knows he's in trouble now because he knows the Philistines are going to be mad at him. So he goes off about 90 miles away, and he stays in a place where there's nobody around, and it's not a hospitable place to stay, and it's not a place you can grow food or even find wild plants to eat. And he knows he's in trouble. He's in hiding. He's trying to get away with it. He's trying to run away from his trouble that he's caused. Verse 9. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The men of Judah asked, "Why have you come up to fight us?" "We have come up to take Samson prisoner," they answered, "to do to him as he did to us." So they go to war. Again, this tit for tat and revenge cycle. You murdered a bunch of people who murdered your wife and your father-in-law, and now we're going to come make war on your people. Well, the men of Judah are like, "Hey, why are you doing this? We're being obedient to you. We're your faithful slaves. Don't pick a fight with us. Why are you doing it?" "Oh, you want Samson? Okay. You really don't have a fight with us? Okay, we can handle this." Verse 11. Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Edom and said to Samson, Don't you realize the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us? So they're basically asking him, hey, why are you causing problems for us? Don't you know they're the leader? They're our leaders. They're our government. Don't. What have you done? They're mad at us now. We're fixing to have to go to war, and we can't defend ourselves. We're gonna lose because you're mad, and you're off in here hiding. You know. He answered, I merely did to them what they did to me. They said to him, we've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. They're going, we're going to handle our problem. We're not going to go to war with them. They just want you, and we're going to hand you over. Now, fortunately, at this point, Samson has realized a few things, and he is not going to fight his own people. Samson, this is the middle of verse 12. Samson said, swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves. Agreed, they answered. We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. So he realizes, okay, I can get away with this. As long as you don't kill me yourself, I can get you out of a tight spot. You can hand me over, and I'm going to be back among the people I won't kill anyway and get revenge on. And y'all don't have to fight, and I'll do it myself. And, you know, he's realized he's strong enough. He's essentially invulnerable. Let's face it. He handles a lion barehanded. He handles bees. He murders 30 men. He can go into a large group of men that just murdered his wife and father-in-law and kill them all without being hurt. He realizes how strong he is. And all he asks is, you don't harm me yourself, sure, tie me up, hand me over, and the Philistines won't be mad at you anymore. They'll just be mad at me, and I'll handle this. And the men of Judah go, sure, that sounds good. Because, of course, they're looking at, here's this Danite from way up north who is causing us trouble, and we didn't pick this fight, and we're just trying to get rid of our trouble. It's not our guy, and we're trying to keep them happy. And they think they've solved their problem, and Samson knows he's not really in trouble, and that God's going to protect him, and no matter what stupid thing he does. And so he comes out of hiding. He lets the men of Judah hand him over, tie him up. And as long as they don't harm him himself, he's going to be fine. And so he gets handed over. Verse 14. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him shouting, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. The ropes on his hand became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Now, donkeys do have strong jawbones. It's a decent club. But you got to be strong to kill a man with one. And that he killed 1,000 men with it, he's got to be really, really strong. And I'm going to say he got a really unusual, strong, fresh jawbone of a donkey for it to last that long. God was with him. God wanted him to cause this fight. And so he kills 1,000 men with a jawbone of a donkey, an improvised weapon. That's amazing in and of itself. He's an amazingly strong man. He's an amazingly strong warrior. We have not heard him using any weapons yet. He's used his bare hands. This is the first time we hear him using any weapon, and he just finds it on the ground. And he kills 1,000 men with it. If he had been crafty and smart with this, he would have been an amazing warrior. We would put him up there probably above David. Above David's strong men in his army. But no, he doesn't do all those things. He's just doing this in his passion, without thought, without planning ahead of time. He's just depending upon his native strength and native ability to do that God's given him. And he doesn't really realize that it's God that gave it to him, or he would have been worshiping Yahweh better. But he just does it. I can't imagine attacking 1,000 men barehanded and winning. And they're used to arm combat. They're soldiers. I mean, he's attacking a camp of soldiers. And yeah, his strength is amazing. That 2 new ropes, he just breaks them off like they were charred flax, which is pretty weak. And, you know, he just picks up something and starts killing people. An army should be able to handle a single guy attacking them. They should be able to win. Just overwhelming with force of numbers, if nothing else. And he gets the upper hand and kills them. That's amazing in and of itself. Of course, God's with him. That's part of it. They don't organize. They don't think. They don't use ranged weapons. They don't use long weapons like spears. They don't attack him for 3 or 4 or 5, 10 sides at once. They don't do the kinds of things they could have done to subdue somebody superior to them. And so he gets the upper hand and kills 1,000 of them. That's part of that is God is exacting his revenge and building enmity between the 2 different groups and using Samson to do it. Verse 16. Then Samson said, with a donkey's jawbone I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone I have killed 1,000 men. Now, he's put on a pun here. In Hebrew, it's really humorous. In English, it doesn't come across quite the same way, but we get the idea that, he's poking fun at them. He's made donkeys of them. The literal, this translation translates the intent of it, but the literal words is he makes a heap of them. And the thing is, the word for heap in Hebrew and the word for donkey sound the same, or similar. And so, he's making this pun. And so with the donkey, he's made of piles. And it's really funny in Hebrew. And, he's making this couplet that's rather witty to brag about his exploits, that he can kill 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone and make heaps of them. And let's face it, 1,000 men's a big pile of bodies. So then, verse 17. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramah Lehi. Now, Lehi was the name of the place, but Ramoth Lehi means Jawbone Hill. It was known as Hill before that, and now it's known as Jawbone Hill because, with a jawbone, he's made a hill of bodies at the hill. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that the Hebrews named places after. And after that, this is known as Jawbone Hill. And everybody locally, in fact, if probably people as they travel by would remember this for the rest of the time they're in the land. This is where Samson killed 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone. It's Jawbone Hill, and we do similar things. I mean, Tombstone, Arizona. I mentioned that, and you have all these images of Tombstone because a bunch of people died there and buried, and tombstones raised for them. And it's a violent place, and we know that history when I just mentioned it. because of the name. This is the kind of thing they did there. Verse 18. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, "You have given your servant this great victory. Now I must die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised." Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and the water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned and he revived. So the spring is called En Hekoar, which is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Now, En Hekoar means collar spring. And the Hebrews used this as an example of a miracle that said that Samson was a mighty man of God because God heard him and God performed a miracle for him. God wanted him alive, and he apparently was seriously thirsty and seriously in need of water, and so God intervened to keep him alive. And for the next 20 years, he leads Israel. It's in the days of the Philistines. The Philistines are still in charge. He doesn't overthrow the government. He doesn't set up his own government. But the Philistines basically decide they're going to collect taxes and not provoke Samson. Provoking Samson is really expensive. They don't want to do that. Maybe we just leave him alone. We'll figure out eventually how to conquer him, how to get revenge on him. But we're not winning. So let's not keep provoking things. The Israelites, on the other hand, get a little bit of respite. Okay, they still got to pay taxes and pay homage and that kind of thing, but they're not suffering militarily because Samson is still living out there, and if you make him mad, man, he's going to kill a bunch of people. And man, if we give him a sword, what could he do in battle? He did that with a jawbone, And so for 20 years, things kind of rock along. And next week, we'll deal with the rest of Samson and what happens to him. Because Samson's still this immoral, self-centered narcissist that is used of God because God knows how to manipulate him, but he's revenge-oriented, and he's still ruled by his passions, and he doesn't think, he doesn't plan ahead. If he had, he could have united the whole country and ruled as king and been a mighty force and led men into battle, and they would have, he could have defended the whole country basically single-handedly. But if he thought, but he doesn't think, he just reacts. And so consequently, he suffers. He's kind of a negative example of what a judge should be. Because with that kind of skills, he could have been amazingly great. And we remember his weaknesses as much as his strengths and the foolishness he does. I mean, let's face it, we remember his first time he has to kill people. It's because he thinks he's clever and he has this riddle nobody can figure out. And then he tells an unfaithful woman. And so he has to kill 30 people to pay his debt. And then in the revenge cycle that comes up from that, he kills a whole bunch more. And he causes a bunch of people to starve to death. And he keeps escalating until they decide, we're not going to keep escalating. We can't get revenge. But he's still that same kind of, I'm going to follow my passions, I'm going to do what I want to do, and, unconcerned about consequences. Holy Father, help us to be people who are wise, who have a fear of you and um, think and read your word and apply it and live by it. And don't just follow our own passions and don't do our own thing, but we consult you and we ask for wisdom and we ask for knowledge and we do what's appropriate and we live wisely and we use the strengths you give us in good ways and not as a cycle of revenge, not just because we're angry, not just because um, we have strength and we can use it and we use it for our own uh, use. But Lord, help us to be people who think ahead, who plan, who execute, that we look at what you want us to do and that we're obedient to you and that we work and live for your kingdom by your principles. In your holy name, amen. And I hope to see you Wednesday. If I don't, I'll see you back here next week, and I hope to see you at church on Sunday. Y'all have a blessed week.